Hey 9 to 5ers, I want to talk to you a little bit about reducing your expenses. This is an important step in getting you on the path to the freedom, getting you out of your job, whatever it is that you're trying to do. Because once you reduce your expenses, you no longer need to earn as much money. So there's two types of expenses that I want to talk to you about that can really make a big impact here. The first type is your recurring expenses. These are the expenses that happen on a recurring basis. They have a frequency to them. And it may be something like your phone bill, internet bill, anything like that that just comes in on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis. And when we reduce these expenses, it now has a longer impact over time because you did the work once to reduce that expense, and now it's carrying on over the length of that bill as long as you have that bill. And it's not necessarily a bigger impact, I'll explain that in a minute, but you now have to do less work over time. You don't have to think about it every time that expense comes up. So that brings me to the second type of expense. These are your one-time expenses. These are a little more difficult because you have to be more mindful about these expenses as they're coming up. See, if you're going to a restaurant and the waiter or waitress asks you, you want a beer or a pop or something like that, and you say, no, I want water. You're having to be more mindful about it because you're maybe automatically conditioned to think, hey, I got to get a drink, and you're going to go to the drink that's going to cost you money as opposed to something that's not. So you got to be mindful of when those types of expenses come up. It may not be in a restaurant. There's probably numerous other examples in your life where that same thing exists. But it's going to be more difficult because you didn't just do the work once. You have to do that work again and again and again. You have to change your mind about, hey, every time I come up to a situation where I have to spend money on something, or not necessarily have to, but where this opportunity presents itself to spend the money, I have to think about, do I want to spend this money or not? And how much money do I want to spend on this? So with that, I want to give you a few tips on reducing these expenses. First is to wait a day. If you come up with this expense that you think you need to have today, challenge yourself to wait a day and see if you still actually need to spend that money. Maybe it's not an emergency where you want to buy a guitar and okay, well, I'm going to wait a day. I get to tomorrow. Well, I still really want to buy a guitar. All right, well, I'm going to wait another day because I don't need it still today. I have a perfectly good guitar at home. I'm going to wait another day. And you just keep seeing how long you can go without spending that money. You make a game out of it. So after a while, you'll get to the point where either I don't actually need to buy that, or okay, I've now come up with a reason I actually can justify why I need to spend that money on whatever it is. And it may not be something nice to treat yourself like a guitar. It may be something that is to fix a part of your house or something like that, where you finally realize, like, hey, if I don't do something, then the problem is going to be worse. So the second tip is to ask somebody else for help. Maybe, coming back to the guitar example, you're trying to go play in a concert and your guitar broke. Well, instead of going out and buying a new guitar, go ask one of your friends or your neighbors or somebody, hey, can I borrow your guitar? And you can then go do what it is that you were planning to do, playing the concert, without having to go spend the money on it. And you can get to that point where you have the resources available and you've justified it again to actually make the expense. But in the meantime, you've now reduced your expenses. Or maybe it's you have a tool that you need for your garage. Probably talking to you guys out there. You don't have to have every tool in the world in your garage. I know I have a habit of that. Hey, I got to fix this one little thing. I'm going to go and try to find the tool that fixes that one little problem that I'm never going to have again. I got to go buy it. Well, instead, if maybe I can borrow the tool from the parts store, or something like that, where I'm not actually having to spend the money to buy the tool that I'm never going to use again. It will keep it free, keep that expense down. The third tip is to split the bill. Maybe that tool is something that you may need on a fair regular basis that you can split with a family member or a friend or a neighbor or whoever that will keep the cost of it down. And this is probably going to be more like a smaller item, but you're not going to be able to do it as well on a big item like a car. You know, something small like a chainsaw. Maybe you can share that with your neighbor. And on recurring expenses, that's going to look more like your Netflix or your internet bill or something like that. You know, a lot of people are already doing that on Netflix, and they may be cracking down on it. Who knows? But find ways on those recurring expenses that you can share accounts or share subscriptions, whatever it is, to keep your costs down on that. So those are my tips. If you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'd love to hear what you think. Thanks.